let's talk about something that's quietly draining resources from our schools. It's a hidden financial crisis. And according to a new report from Bob Slovic over at Virtualization Options, it's all about technology. You see, the report lays out how rigid, outdated tech spending is putting a massive squeeze on budgets, leaving less money for things like teachers and student programs.
And to really get a sense of the scale here, the report kicks off with a truly staggering number. $2.4 billion. That's how much schools across the country have had to postpone in critical IT projects. We're not talking about fancy new gadgets, we're talking about essential upgrades that have been kicked down the road because the funds just aren't there.
And look, this isn't just a problem for a few schools in one part of the country. We're talking about 67%, that's 2/3 of all K-12 school districts feeling this pinch. It's a systemic issue touching almost every community.
So what does that squeeze actually feel like on the ground? Well, on average, districts are seeing their IT spending cut by 23%. When you're working with a tight budget to begin with, a cut that deep is brutal. It forces these impossible choices between keeping the Wi-Fi on and funding other essential needs. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll dig into the hidden crisis itself. Then, we'll see how schools get trapped by these tech contracts. From there, we'll look at a solution, the partnership advantage, see how it works in the real world, and finally, lay out a path for smarter schools. All right, first up, the hidden tech crisis. Because the true cost here goes way beyond the numbers on a balance sheet. It really hits students and teachers where it matters most, in the classroom. You know, these budget cuts, they create this whole cascade of problems. When you put off maintenance, systems eventually fail. When tech is old and slow, productivity just tanks. And of course, old systems are a huge security risk. But honestly, the biggest cost, the most damaging one, is this. When kids don't have access to reliable digital tools, it creates achievement gaps, and those can last a lifetime.
So how in the world does this keep happening? Well, that takes us right to the heart of the problem. Schools are getting trapped by their tech contracts. Think of them like invisible walls that lock districts into bad deals they can't escape.
The official term for these walls is exit barriers. And really, it's just what it sounds like. Obstacles that make it nearly impossible for a school to switch to a new IT provider, even if they know it would be cheaper or better. They're basically handcuffed to their current deal. So, what do these barriers actually look like? Well, you've got things like crazy high penalties for breaking a multi-year contract, or you get stuck with a company's special software that doesn't work with anyone else's. And then there are the huge operational hurdles, like the nightmare of moving all your data or the cost of retraining your entire staff. It's a really effective trap. But okay, it's not all doom and gloom. There is a way out, and it requires a whole new way of thinking called the partnership advantage. It's a smarter approach that can actually free up resources for our schools. Which of course brings us to the most important question, right? If the old way of doing things, buying a ton of equipment, signing these long, rigid contracts, if that's broken, what's the alternative?
Well, the alternative is a complete change in strategy. On the one hand, you've got the traditional model, huge upfront costs, and the school carries all the risk if something breaks or becomes obsolete. But the partnership model flips that script. Instead of a giant purchase, schools get a predictable monthly bill. Instead of trying to be tech experts, they get to borrow that expertise. It's all about shifting from owning tech to simply accessing it as a service.
Now for the ultimate stress test. Let's talk about bridging the digital divide. Because if this partnership model can work in the toughest environments imaginable, like our rural school districts, well then it can work just about anywhere.
I mean, the challenges in rural areas are just on another level. You're often dealing with unreliable internet, there's no local tech support to call, budgets are razor thin, and because you're a small district, you can't get the same pricing as a big one. It's just a perfect storm of problems.
The good news is, we have more tools than ever to solve this. It's not just one size fits all anymore. We've got fiber, fixed wireless, and the real game changer, new low Earth orbit satellite internet. And a lot of the time, the smartest move is a hybrid approach, mixing and matching these to build a network that actually works. And here's another really cool piece of the puzzle, a technology called edge computing. The simple version is, you put a small, powerful computer server right there at the school. It does a lot of the heavy lifting locally, so the school isn't totally dependent on a shaky internet connection. This makes all those modern learning apps fast and reliable, even if you're out in the middle of nowhere. And the impact of this is just wow. By handling things locally, edge computing can cut a school's need for internet bandwidth by up to 75%.
That is a huge efficiency gain that saves a ton of money.
But here's the stat that really matters for the classroom. Because things are running locally, even if the internet goes down, learning doesn't have to stop. This can lead to a 90% improvement in uptime. For a school, that's everything. Class goes on no matter what.
So let's bring this all home. What does this all mean for the future? It's about building smarter tech to create smarter schools. Let's map out what that path forward actually looks like.
And look, this isn't just theory. Just listen to this from Superintendent Sarah Johnson. She said that switching to a partnership transformed our district capabilities while reducing costs by 30%. That's the whole point right there. The strategy doesn't just improve technology, it frees up money that can go directly back to students and teachers.
So what are the big takeaways? The report boils it down to 5 key actions. First, really do your homework on providers. Second, negotiate smarter contracts that always give you a way out. Third, team up with other nearby districts to get better deals. Fourth, invest in the right tech for your specific area, like satellite or edge. And finally, never stop reviewing and improving.
And that really leaves us with one final and maybe most important question to think about. What about the schools in your community? Is their tech strategy actually built for the future, or is it stuck in the past, draining precious resources away from our kids' education?